everyone, it's Kerry back with you today. So for anyone who's been following us for a while, you'll know that I have a love of authentic French ephemera. And today I'm going to be using some of that. If you don't have authentic French ephemera, you can of course use digitals or just stamps or any kind of paper that you like. But I wanted to recreate some of these faux vintage French books. And I also recently acquired a rather hefty stash of vintage, or not vintage, of Reader's Digest books. And I've gutted all the books for the covers, but I'm left with these text blocks. So this project will be using up those, so that's great. It saves those book pages from the landfill. So I'm going to grab a couple of other supplies and I'll be right back. So I've got some supplies here in front of me. I've just got some plain water here, but if you want them to look a little bit more sort of vintage tones, you might want to use some tea. I've also got an old metal fork, a meat tenderizer, and this is a sole ripper for roughing up the bottom of, I think they mostly use it on ballet shoes or leather-soled shoes. This is very sharp and kind of violent, so if you have one of these you've got to be really careful with it. So this process does create a fair amount of mess depending on how much distressing you do. You don't have to distress it, of course. You could just leave them as a book block, wrap the paper around and just have them with the smooth edges. That would look fine as well, but I really like the distressed look. So my book has one of these fabric bookmarks. I'm just going to pop this water to the side for a sec. So I want to keep that intact, so I'm going to tuck that into the book as far as I can and then make sure it's not hanging out so it doesn't get shredded when I start the distressing. So then I'm going to bring my water in, and the first thing I'm going to do is just dip the edges of my book pages in the water just for a couple of seconds till they start absorbing up some of that water. And then I'll do the same on both ends, and you can see it sort of starts soaking in about a centimetre. So this will naturally start distressing the book. You'll sort of get these wavy page edges. Sorry if you can hear the trucks outside. They're still cleaning up from the storm we had a couple of weeks ago, and they're out there trimming the trees away from the power lines at the moment. Alright, the other thing that I like to do is to flick through the book, and if there's any very heavily coloured pages like these ones, I actually take these out because I don't want those to show up on the edge of my books where I'm distressing. Okay, so the rest of that looks fine. Now I might actually remove these pages as well from the front. Yes, hello pussycat. There you go, you can sit there. Don't tread on that because that'll hurt. So these little bits here, I want to cut these off, so I'm just going to use my scissors to trim that as close as I can to the spine. Right, just had to cut off the cat, and now we're back. So my edges are starting to get all wibbly wobbly, which is fine, I'm happy with that, but I want to distress them quite a bit more, so I'm going to start by bashing them with this meat tenderizer, and this will start to distress the edges. So you can see that's popping some dents in there. You can also rub it along the page edges. And then another thing I like to do is curl the book sort of back on itself and expose the edges of the pages a little bit more. And then I come in with this sole ripper and basically rip the sole out of the book. Now this is very sharp, so make sure you don't get your fingers. So you can see that I'm starting to get that very distressed look along the edges of the pages there, and it's up to you how much distressing you do. But basically I go round all three sides and heavily distress it, and once I've given it all a good go over with the Soul Ripper, I then come back in with this metal fork and I sort of hold the fork on an angle and I pop the prongs, force them into the pages, and this will cause some of the edges of the pages to crease a little bit, and it will also cause some of the edges of the pages to tear as well. So you sort of get these rough hairy bits hanging out, and I basically just pull them out, and if there's some little ones I leave those because I think that sort of adds to it as well. So I'll do this until I'm happy with the way that it looks on all three sides. But as you can see, it does make a fair bit of mess. So here's one that I have worked on earlier today, and you can see that I've distressed all of these edges fairly well. And you can just keep going back in until you're completely happy with how it looks. And I sometimes on these edges, I go, rather than coming out this way, I mean I do that as well, but I sometimes go in as well towards the spine because it helps fatten up this end of the book rather than just having it all fat at this end. It sort of reminds me of my hairdressing days where we used to get the little old ladies come in for their sets and we'd have to tease or back comb their hair so that it would, you'd get this knotted patch in their hair that would help maintain their curls for the week. So it sort of helps even out how much thickness is in the book there, as opposed to this end where it's sort of more skinny here. Okay, so I've got my very distressed looking pages here, and they are still a bit damp, but that's alright. I'm going to work on adding my French ephemera now. So I found this piece and I quite like the look of this. It's a very, very pale green and it's been folded in half, and I think that half will fit pretty much perfectly on the cover. And then on the spine I'm going to use a piece of this writing here. So the first thing I need to do is find the width of my book, and because I've got these little headbands here which I want to keep, I need my spine piece of paper to fit in between those. So just roughly measuring. So I need my page to be about that long. And I just need a piece that's the thickness of my spine plus a little bit, so about there, and then I'll save this piece for another project as well. So I'm just going to check along the edge of my spine and make sure all this paper is glued down. And then I'm going to add glue onto my spine. And I'm just using art glitter glue. I'm just going to sort of smooth that out a bit. And then I'm going to add this paper to my spine and give that a good press down. Now it doesn't matter if I'm not 100% even on both sides because this edge is going to get covered up. So now I'm just going to attach these edges to the front of the book, and the same again on the back. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with my paper here, and it's going to tear very easily along that crease. I'll save that other bit for the back. And I'm just going to use glue stick around the middle of this page, because my paper is pretty fragile. And then I'll pop some art glitter glue around the edges. Now, I don't really care if the glue seeps onto, the first couple of pages underneath, because it's just a decor piece. It's not actually a book that anyone's going to pick up and read. Then I'll just fold that up. Now the paper is quite fragile, so I don't want to be too rough with my burnishing, because it could tear while the papers are all still a bit damp. So that's my front cover, and I need to turn it over and do the same on the back, but I just want this glue to dry a little bit first. Okay, so now we'll just have a go at gluing that on the back. Hopefully it's dry enough. The good thing about it being all distressed is if anything does tear, it just adds to it anyway. So just gluing that down a bit better, and then I'm popping glue stick over the back here, art glitter glue around the edges. So we just need that to dry a little bit before we continue distressing the edges. So it's still a little bit damp, but to finish off I get the distressing tool and I go around the edge. Just sort of blend the cut or straight edge of the piece of paper in with the very heavily distressed edges of the book. Now if you've got areas that seem to be not blending as well, like this one, this is a bit white compared to the green of this paper, then you can of course just use some distress ink, but I'm just going to go over that a little bit more, and then I'll go all the way round using this method. So there we go, that's my distressed edges and all covered with the vintage paper. Now it will take a couple of days for this to dry properly, and once it's dry properly you could add some more distressing if you need to, if you're not happy with it, or you could use some string perhaps in an old photograph or some flowers or a key or something and tie them up and just have them as a book stack on your bench. So I love the way they look. I think they do look pretty authentic. And they use up a huge stack of book pages all in one go, which I think is great, and just a really fun project to do. So I hope you'll have a go. I'd love to see what you create. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye.